welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Unexposed Australasia event. We're really excited to have three of our very good friends and very good supporters of Unexposed joining us today to talk about their photography and projects, and hopefully give us a little bit of inspiration about how they go about their projects and develop a body of work and what they do with them then. So yeah, we're really thank you so much, ladies. We're really great to see you all today. Introducing Linda, who is one of our co-founders and co-runners of Unexposed Australasia, and she's going to give us an intro to the artists tonight and their talks. Thanks, Linda.
Hello, everyone. Okay, well, first up, we've got Geraldine Lefoe. Geraldine is currently reined in on Cradle Mountain, but she's usually based in Wollongong, New South Wales. She enjoys a range of photography from street to experimental abstracts to traditional landscapes, and she exhibits several times each year. Take it away, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Linda. Yes, I do have a picture of South Beach in Wollongong as my background, just to remind me of what sunshine looks like. It's been a very long 8 days of rain here, but we still managed to get out and do some photography and some walking and explore the West Coast. So it's still been pretty interesting. And most importantly, we're warm.
Yes.
So I'll just give you a very short background, and then I'll start sharing my screen. As Linda said, I've been engaged in photography for quite some time. I think, like many people, I was the family photographer when I was a kid. So I started off on film. When I met my husband-to-be, we were both very keen photographers, and once we moved in together, we had a darkroom set up and used to do all our printing and got very excited about that until we moved to Broken Hill and had a baby on the way, which kind of changed things. You couldn't keep the chemicals around babies, and they would have just been hopeless in the heat in Broken Hill. So we kind of put that aside for quite a few years. And then I picked up my first DSLR. I was on a sabbatical to Europe and the US and managed to buy my first digital camera, which cost a very small fortune for a pretty crappy 2-megapixel camera in the US. But then I was sold, of course, and from then on we had to buy another one because we kept fighting over who was taking the photos, and it just progressed from there. So as Linda said, I did a bit of exhibiting of my work before I retired from my full-time job as an academic, but there's not a lot of spare time when you're an academic to do anything else. It kind of becomes a 14-hour-a-day job, as I'm sure many of yours are. But once I retired in 2012, I declined all invitations to continue working for nothing for the university, which is what most academics do. And I think they were pretty used to working fairly freely for nothing anyway. But I started doing a lot more work and really started to pursue my passion more seriously. By then, I'd already started exhibiting with a group of Wollongong artists, many of whom worked at the uni in the Creative Arts Department. So I was quite chuffed when they invited me to join their International Women's Day exhibition each year. And I've been exhibiting with them now for, 10 years, 12 years. And I really enjoy that. I've also been involved with Head On, both with other groups as well as this group, and of course Loud and Luminous, as many of you have as well. And for that reason, I've always had an involvement with working with groups or series, because usually when I'm exhibiting a series about something, or there is a theme that I'm working towards. So I became quite used to doing that. When I first started, what I did was go back through my back catalogue, because when I was working, I did a lot of travel and a lot of travel photography, but I really had time to do anything with it once I got home. And, you know, sometimes I might pull a couple of pictures out and do something with them, but I didn't ever look at it from a series or a theme point of view. And so I then took up using Lightroom a lot. And I used the collections in Lightroom to help me organise. And as I think of ideas, I'll start a set in the Lightroom collection and then start adding to it from there. So I'm going to talk tonight about a series I worked on last year. And let me see if I can get that to go to full screen. So 220, like for many people, changed my direction. I had trips booked to Japan, Siberia and Mongolia, all of which were squashed, and looks as though I'll be unlikely to certainly make Siberia and Mongolia now. As someone over 65 and with an autoimmune problem, I was relegated to not going near any cities or any people and shooting in my local area. And my usual street photography hangouts were places where suddenly there were a lot of commuters and bike riders. And I found that, the walkways were crowded. The bike riders, some of them seemed to be visually illiterate and couldn't read the dismount here signs, but also thought that spitting and clearing their noses on the pathway was acceptable. With COVID aside, I couldn't imagine why. Anyway, so I escaped to the beaches and started focusing more on the beaches. And I was very fortunate. I live across the road from one, which isn't used as much. And that's where I started on my series of working and photographing people in the water. I'd been experimenting with slow shutter speeds for a while and thought I thought initially I'd develop that technique shooting waves and beach landscapes, but I gradually started including people and their interactions with the water. So what you're seeing here, and usually I went out at dawn because that was when the place was the least crowded, especially in early April when it became, we had a few weeks lockdown. I know we're very privileged compared to so many other countries in the world who've had months and months of lockdown, or those in Melbourne who've had months and months in lockdown. But we really only had a few weeks of lockdown. But then, somebody in my age bracket and group, I still had to be very wary of the kind of contact I had with people. But I started off shooting down at the beach, and you'll see here slow shutter speeds and panning movements helped me to capture the light of the early morning and to capture how the people were interacting with the water, which was what my focus was. So, and I started to have some success there. So by April, I really became quite fixated. I was looking at tide charts, surf reports, carefully watching the weather. Wish I'd done that before I came to Cradle Mountain. I still didn't have a clear idea of where I was going, but in late April I caught some body surfers and started to see how they were moving in the water. Now, I used to body surf. I grew up on the South Coast, and I used to body surf before I went out into the country teaching for years in Broken Hill and places like that. So I'd been away from the water for a long time, and I was just a bit amazed at the way some people interacted with the water, and then started to find ways of looking for interactions and how people work together in the water. One of the things I did notice early on was that there was a certain depth of the water that people didn't like to get wet. And as the waves came closer to them, a lot of them would jump into the air. So I tried to get some different combinations of people in the waves and out of the waves. And then one afternoon, late afternoon, we had quite a big swell at the beach across the road, and the body surfers arrived. And I found these guys who body surfed with their arms behind them. which, you know, to me was about the worst thing you could possibly do, since my thoughts were always that you put your arms out to make sure your head didn't crack the sand. But anyway, they certainly had a style about them. But once I started to catch these kind of images, which is that late afternoon light, lighting them up through the water, and as you can see here with the golden feet reflecting off the body that was out of the water. So then I was hooked. I had to get in and explore that a bit more. And those last two are certainly my favourite ones, where, you know, people were completely immersed in the environment and moving through that water. So I was, you know, really impressed with that. And so over time, as I learnt more about the conditions, I gradually brought together some series. So the first one I've just shown you is the body surfers. And then after that, I moved to North Beach, Wollongong, which is the most popular beach. By then, we'd had no COVID in Wollongong. I think there'd only been one person in Wollongong Hospital, and people lightened up a bit and weren't so concerned. And in fact, at one stage, the local coffee shop shut down because people were so unconcerned and closed for 2 weeks, and then said they weren't opening until everybody promised to be good. And so people started behaving, and you know, we all went back and I started doing my photography again. So my surfers series certainly reached its peak when an East Coast low hit, and that brought in the conditions that both local surfers and Sydney surfers just had to come down the coast. The waves were 3 to 4 metres high. I found if I waited till after the bad weather, which had brought the swell died down, then the next couple of days there'd still be a big swell and the light would be beautiful. And so I was looking at capturing the way people were immersing themselves in the water. I used a long lens. I know quite a few people now who get in the water and photograph these people, but that's never going to happen, especially when the water is 14 or 15 degrees. So how I engaged was with quite a long lens on 100 to 400 with an extender. And because I wanted to pan and to have a slow shutter speed, I wasn't looking for the sharpness that you might get. Like an extender always softens your images, but that wasn't a problem with what I was trying to do. I was in awe of their ability to fly and twist and move around in the water. Often I was the person on the shore that commiserated when they walked out of the water with their board snapped in half, and it was quite amazing how many boards snapped in half during the East Coast swell. But often the surfers would come and have a chat and say, wow, did you see that one, or did you capture that one, and come and have a chat to me while it was going. So it was lots of fun, and I had a good chance to get to know people. So I'll just take you through these ones. But these were the kinds of images that I started. I must tell you that I probably took thousands of images over time. I did a lot of practicing when the surf wasn't necessarily good, or the light wasn't necessarily good, to improve my skills, so that when there was good light and the surf was up, then I had a better chance of capturing what I was after. And I wanted to show how small we are in the scheme of things, you know, when nature's at its best and at its worst. So you can see that as indicated in some of the images here, and comparatively how big the waves were for these people. So, and the big swell really brought out the really top surfers. So South Coast's got quite a few very famous surfers, but, you know, you could see the difference when the learners or the average surfers weren't actually going to go out, and the people who were going out were the really top surfers. So it was a great opportunity for capturing some of those. As time went on, I'll just take you through these ones. I also looked at just some individuals. So again, looking at the body surface, and again with a slow shutter speed. I think these ones are like a 1/6 or an 1/8 of a second, and a bit of movement or panning. And this was one woman I saw who was rolling around in the waves this day and moving herself through the waves, sometimes winning and sometimes not, and sometimes looking as though she wondered why she'd gotten into the water. But she had a lot of fun, and she was really there enjoying herself. And now, from a number of these images, I was involved in exhibiting. Some of them I used in International Women's Day exhibition. The next ones I'll show you. But I also exhibit with a group of friends at the end of each year. And we were in Wollongong, and we met monthly right through we do this. Normally we meet face to face, have lunch and wine and talk about our photos once a month. But in 2020, it was all Zoom, as you can imagine. But it inspires us to do new work and to keep moving. And I think it's really good to get that feedback on your work as you're progressing and as you're developing your ideas, to have somebody to share it with. And then towards the end of the year, Head On were offering reviews through some of their people, and Sandy Edwards worked with me through Zoom on it for an hour, and we talked about how to group the photos and looked at different ways of organising them. And I really encourage people to get that kind of mentoring help if you haven't done it before. I found she was really good at helping me bring the groups together and make the most out of them, and say, why are you including that one that doesn't fit? And no, you can't just keep it because you like it. It's not enough to develop the series. So I found she was very good at that. So these were the images that I used for the International Women's Day exhibition. And it was about facing challenges at the beginning of this year. And because it was International Women's Day, I did focus on women for it, but I also had some others that I'd exhibited at the end of the year of people doing body surfing in the water. This old gentleman must have been well into his 80s, I think, and it just astonished me that he would get out there every day and swim. This was probably the hardest one to capture, and I spent weeks trying to get it. I wanted to show how the body surfers interacted in the water, but kept their space, because, of course, we had to have 1.5 metre spacing. And I wanted to capture some coming towards me and some going away from me. It took me a very, very long time, so I was absolutely thrilled to bits when I finally captured this one of the movement in the water, of the waves crashing and the way people interacted with it. And just to finish up, I should finish up on this one. I'm just going to read you the artist statement that I made for the International Women's Day. And again, Sandy Edwards helped me to craft my ideas a bit more by helping me to talking me through doing this kind of thing. So I'm calling the series Deep Cleaning, Dreaming Not Drowning, and it's still a developing series. I'm sure that there is more that I can add to it, but this is where I'm at the moment. I was really inspired by Tim Winton's book, Breathe. I'm sure some of you have read it, and it's all about surfing culture and some of the rather sad sides of surfing culture as well as the good. But his evocative words about surfing really captured me. So I started off with a quote from him. It's funny that you never really think much about breathing until it's all you ever think about. And I kind of felt that, that applied to the whole COVID thing where, people were concerned about whether or not they were going to get ventilated and keep breathing. But it also applied to these people in the water where they immersed themselves and took themselves away from what was going on in the world. So my artist statement starts, before heading to country New South Wales for my first job in the late 70s, I spent my last day on the coast body surfing. The waves were huge, and as I caught each one, my fears for the future dissipated as I felt the exhilaration of becoming one with the water. Apprehension left my body as joy and intoxication took over. I went home ready to face the future and feeling I was in control of my destiny, though it would be many years before I lived near the ocean again. More than 40 years later, and I'm now residing within earshot of the ocean. Chaos has descended on my world, but I still have access to the ocean, this time with a camera in my hand. I capture the locals who use boards or their own bodies to face the challenge of the unpredictable waves, which in turn provides a certain kind of peace from the overwhelming pain rippling through the world. They wrestle to control nature in a world where we've lost control. They return to shore with smiles on their faces and their souls revitalised. These images portray the challenges they face in the ocean through engagement rather than fear, through expectations of safety rather than danger, through defiance for the intimidation the waves brought each day. The camaraderie between the swimmers was wonderful, the joking, the caring, and feelings of inclusion as they chatted, questioned, and welcomed strangers to their midst each morning allowed them to focus on life instead of death, on health and well-being instead of depression and fear. My images captured the challenges My images captured the challenges faced in the water, but also feelings of anticipation, invigoration, elation, and finally relaxation as people sought to become one with the ocean and to forget for a little while all that's happening in the world. So I'll leave it there. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I think Marie had a question on the Geraldine. This is stunning. Do you use a tripod for these? She said in the comments and the chat.
No, I don't use it. I use a monopod because I find a tripod restricts my movements too much. It took me quite a while to learn to use a monopod properly, but I've got it really well worked out now. I have a plastic bag in my pocket in case the rain starts and I can whip it over my long lens so quickly. But really, I've found a monopod's fantastic. I think my tripod's gathering dust somewhere.
Thanks, Jerry. If anyone else has any questions they think of, then you can type them. We can ask them at the end as well of Jerry, if she's still with us. Then. But that was really fascinating. The images are really, really stunning. And I actually really love hearing your artist statement too, because that's always a challenge when you put a series of photos together and someone asks you for an artist statement. Oh my God, go into mortal fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you. That's really wonderful. Linda.
That was fantastic. Thanks. So next up we have Ushi Grant. And Ushi is a street travel. Are you ready?
I think so. You're about as ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Ushi is a street travel portraiture and fine art photographer based in northeast Victoria. Her love of photography grew from the moment she received her first camera at age of 10. Ushi is interested in the world around her and aims to capture a story, idea or emotion through her images. Ushi's work has appeared in Lonely Planet, Australian Traveller and Mobiography, which is really hard to say, Mobiography, magazines and on Getty Images. Her work was also included in the recently published book Women Street Photographers, and I think she has a copy there to show.
Thanks, Linda. Well, Geraldine was a hard act to follow because I think I've said to many people that I hate talking about myself, and I hate and I stumble on my words. So forgive me if I'm a bit. I've had my glass of wine, so I think I'm good. Yeah, so I've had a camera in my hand since I was, about 10 years old. I had a little Kodak Instamatic camera, and it was mainly just capturing family and just general stuff. But I've always enjoyed capturing a moment and holding on to that moment. And I guess I'm like Jerry as well, having done a lot of travel in my life because that's was my job up until JobKeeper ended back in the end of March. So my real job is that I'm a travel consultant. I deal especially with all things South and Latin America. So I do get to travel a little bit. And so I've got a lot of travel photos. My parents were always big travellers. They immigrated to Australia when I was a year old. So, I guess my first bit of travel started back then, travelling all the way to Australia, and they always went back to Europe. So I was always tagging along with them. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be looking. I'm looking at Linda at the moment, so I hope that's not too weird for everybody. Yeah, so like Jerry, I've got a whole computer full of images of travel destinations and markets, and so I've never been huge on landscapes as such. Get me into a market anywhere I go, and that's my thing. So probably before I even realised it, I was a street photographer, just capturing life on the street. And it probably wasn't until, so going back a few years, I'd actually started my photographic life as a photographer for a local newspaper. So we did, local stories and real estate and all that kind of stuff. Long story short, that went by the wayside. So then I gave up photography for a little while, apart from, when I went travelling or taking photos of the family. So it wasn't until this little thing called Instagram came upon us, and, I started posting little photos, and it kind of gave me an audience, if you will, rather than having photos just stuck on a computer, never to see the light of day again. All of a sudden, I had a bit of an audience, and then because my love also is black and white photography, I love all those beautiful classic old photos, and for me, again, as with all photography, it's always about the light, but it's also about telling stories and capturing moments. We recently, as you know, Linda, went to India, and I think I remember Vineet calling my sort of style of photography quiet and curious, which was kind of interesting because it was quiet and curious. And I thought I'd never sort of thought about how I capture things before, and I thought that was a really interesting take on what I do. And looking back on a lot of my work that I post on my street account, it's quiet moments. It's people just sort of being in their environment. It's often mine aren't frenetic, in your face images. They're kind of more. I wouldn't say considered, but they tend to have solo people in them. I don't know whether that says more about me and who I am. But yeah, so this little thing called Instagram has been a real. It's been great to get your work out there, but it also can be a bit of a rod on your back as well, because you kind of feel like, you know, you've got to post, you've got to be doing things. So and posting all the time and responding. So at one point I just had to give it all away because it was just getting way too much for me. But with the COVID and having moved away from Melbourne, I now live in the country, and street photography is kind of a bit difficult in the country because, you know, you can't walk around with a camera and just shoot people because they sort of look at you and go, "What the hell are you doing?" So the last year, without having people around for a start and not being able to get down to Melbourne to do any street photography, I've started doing a little bit of urban stuff, just because I guess my love has always been quite graphic images, quite geometric. It's all about the shapes and textures and patterns. So and I love the work of Jeffrey Smart. Now, he's not a photographer; he's actually a painter, and I love his urban work. And so I've started doing a little bit of that kind of thing without any people in it. It's all about the shapes and the colours. And so girlfriend and I have recently had an exhibition up here. We my girlfriend, who's a photographer up this way, she does a lot of landscape stuff, and mine was very urban. So it was quite interesting to have those both sitting there together at the winery where we had our exhibition. And look, I've been part of group exhibitions, so I've kind of been able to hide behind, you know, not put myself out there. So I thought it was a bit confronting once I'd chosen my images and you know, put them out there for people to see. And I said to my husband, I don't think I can do this, because you're putting yourself out there for people to go, you know, and see your work. And having them printed and hanging up on a wall for people to come and see, I found to be a lot different to having them on Instagram, because you can kind of hide behind that, you know, you be a little bit more invisible, if that's the right word. But to have people come and look at your work that you've put your heart and soul into was a bit confronting, but it was good in the end. Look, I'm glad I did it. Julia helped me with a few things to get it off the ground and how to put it together. So thank you, Julia, wherever you are. And Susan Bruni-Alti, who also has had exhibitions, she gave me a lot of advice too. So I thank her as well. But yeah, so it was really good. And I'll share the screen of some of the images that I've done. So this is completely different. This is like a 180-degree turnaround from what I usually do. But it was actually quite liberating to do something different as well. Now, is that it? Okay, so all of these are pretty much local to me. A couple were I'd taken in Melbourne during various trips. So again, with this one, I was just really drawn to all the shapes and the colours and the geometric of it. With this one, can you see that? Can you see the next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So I'll just run through them. again, these are just different to, because my photography is normally quite subdued, whereas these are quite graphic in nature, very colourful. So these are the images that I had just recently in the exhibition up here in Rutherglen. Yeah, so they're the ones I had. I've got obviously more, but they're the ones I chose, rightly or wrongly, for the exhibition. And again, it was. I'm really glad that that I did the exhibition. It was a bit daunting, and a big learning curve as well for me. So. Somebody already asked me, I think it might have been Julia, when are you having your next one? I thought, oh my goodness, I'm still getting over this one. Yeah, so I actually quite enjoyed putting together like a body of work. As Jerry said, it's you know, we have so many different images and they're all sort of on our computer, and to then put them into some sort of order and collections, that's sort of the harder part, and to shoot towards something as well, I found really, really good, like to go out with a purpose and think, okay, today I want to try and capture, you know, this, you know, and yeah, so it's been a really interesting few months for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was fantastic, Ushi. I really liked the photos for your exhibition. When I saw that, the first one you showed on Instagram a little while ago, I was just blown away. I thought it was just beautiful.
Thank you.
Really clever. And really interesting what you have to say about the exhibitions too, being a solo exhibition. I hadn't.
It really is, because you really kind of put yourself out there. It's although I did share the exhibition with a girlfriend, it's still that process of, you know, you put so much into it, because you know, you do all the printing and you know, you frame it and you hang it up, and there's so much emotion and time that goes into doing that, you know, when you put it out there for people to come and I guess judge in a way, I kind of found that really confronting, because a lot of people think that, oh, you know, I'm very outgoing, and, you know, but deep down inside, I'm just a bundle of nerves, and, you know, I'm actually quite introverted in a way. So to actually put my work out there has just been, yeah, quite confronting. Yeah.
Good.
But as I said, you know, I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
And so, Ushi, after the event, now looking back, I guess that feeling you had before and after, how would you say? You know, obviously you feel rewarded for it now, and glad you did it, and all of those.
Look,
things.
I'm glad I did it. I was really second guessing myself when I was first putting it together, because the other photographer, because we're in a country area, she does beautiful, you know, landscapes. Mine are really full on urban, and initially I was thinking, yeah, I'll do some landscapes. But at the end of the day, that's not what I feel. That's not me. It's not what it's not what I'm passionate about. And so I reverted back to the urban stuff, and yeah, so the difference between then and now, there's a few things I've learnt along the way, and again, the whole curation thing. I think Jerry spoke about that, whether images work together or not, and, you know, whether they may not be your best image, but they're going to sit together with the other images better. So that was quite interesting to do that exercise as well, to not put things in that I thought, you know, everybody said, oh, I like that, put it in. Well, it's not about, you know, you liking it, but it's about how that will sit in the rest of the body of work. So but it was great. I sold some work during the exhibition, so that's really cool. But funnily enough, they weren't people from the country. They were people that had come up from Melbourne. So and they've got friends that they told. So I've been contacted by some other people already. So it's been good in that sense that yeah. So I mean, look, it was never about selling work. It was more about the whole process of doing something really different and challenging myself to get out and do something else, because obviously the whole street photography thing that I have been doing and that I love wasn't there for me for the last year. So it's been good. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it's over, and I've learned a lot from it as well.
Yeah, it certainly is a learning process, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Ushi. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Linda, over to you.
Okay. So next we have Rosie English. Originally from Ireland, Rosie has lived and travelled all over the world and is now settled in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. She took up photography in 2013 in order to capture both the ocean and the community attached to it. You'll find her most mornings on Bondi, Tamarama and Bronte beaches, or in the water with her underwater camera. Rosie.
I have to turn off on mute. so I'm getting very comfortable there watching Jerry and Ushi's work. Beautiful work, guys, and learning a lot from you guys as well, because as Linda just said, I just took up the camera. Unlike you guys, I haven't been around it my whole life. I took it up about 7 or 8 years ago and probably got serious about it probably about 6 years ago. So I think I probably start off by saying, hi, my name's Rosie. I'm a photoholic. And I intend to stay that way. Don't like alcohol, so maybe that's why I took up the camera. Who knows? I'm Irish. We've got to be addicted to something. When it was quite interesting when Linda and Rebecca were asking me, for a project, because I haven't been doing it so long. I'm like, projects, I have sort of folders for different themes in my life room. But I don't go out there thinking, oh, today or for the next few weeks or the next few months, this is going to be my focus. And so I'd probably say my project has been for the last 6 years and will continue to be probably most predominantly Bronte and Bronte pools specifically. Combined with the fact that my external hard drive crashed a few days ago, I was initially wanting to put together, considering the day it is today, Anzac Day, because Anzac Day is very special to me. And it only became so in the last 3 or 4 years. Being Irish, I grew up in a country where we didn't have commemorations or marches because Ireland wasn't involved in any wars really probably since World War I. So it was a real revelation for me coming over here. And I'd sort of hear about Anzac and I thought it was too up in the bar and all that sort of thing. And a few years ago, and this is the wonderful thing about cameras, I was able to go down there about 4 or 5 years ago and watch the parade in Sydney. And it just completely blew me away, not just visually or photographically, but from a people perspective, which is a huge part of my work. People are really, really important to me. In my work, I work in sales, so I like talking and I like listening, but I like communicating. So people are always to the center of where my camera is focusing on. In the first year I started with my camera, I thought I've got to do sunsets and sunrises and I'll be down on the beach. And I got bored very quickly, and I had a tripod, and I'd leave it in the sand and go running off after. I just follow my eye. And I always say that to people, follow your eye. You know, there's no should, you should do this, you should do that. I just followed my instinct. And again, I think speaking to women, and I find, you know, most of us are sort of more mature. We listen to what we think we should be doing rather than to what we read in a handbook or see in a video. This is what you should be doing if you're doing photography, or if you live in this area, this is what you should be photographing. And I think that's the wonderful thing about being a more mature female photographer as well, that you just listen to what you want to do. So with the Anzacs, which I did want to sort of demonstrate today as a gesture towards them, but also because I suppose that has been an ongoing project for me over the last 4 or 5 years. It was a revelation meeting people who'd been in wars. I'd never really met people like that before, and just seeing their faces, and also being very aware that they were getting older and older, and we were losing more and more of them as every year went by, and it became important for me to document that, but also to show. I would go down the back streets rather than where the parade was, and I would want to take photographs of them as they were sitting around. Lots of them were having cigarettes together outside RSL clubs, chatting about the old times, all the old battalions together. And I wanted to, you know, take photographs of them, not in a sensationalist way, but sit and chat with them and listen to their stories. Because I think a lot of them have, as they are getting older, they're not as listened to maybe. You know, we know the whole big Anzac story, but we're not listening to the individual stories. So that was really important. But unfortunately, it is. I have saved everything in my iDrive because I did go through the hard drive scenario this time last year, and I learned my lesson. So if anybody's out there, have a online backup cloud, because I had a nightmare last year. Same thing happened about a week or two ago. So unfortunately, I can't bring you the Anzacs. I don't have the whole collection. So I did have some photos on 500 Pics, which is a website I use sometimes just when I'm checking out edits that I'm doing, and I throw things up there. So I was able to make a portfolio of sort of photos of Bronte over the years. So let me do now. I've got to get the share screen. Let me bring up the thing first. Hold on. And make sure. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay. Okay, guys, can you see that folder?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing nodding heads, so I take that as yes.
Yep.
So for those around Sydney, you'll recognize Bronte Pool. I think anybody who follows me on, or anybody who's on Instagram in Australia, you'll see Bronte Pool come up so much. It's a real influencer location. People go there to take their bikini shots. It's a real long exposure sunrise location. But I started taking photographs of the people and the community around there, because also I actually now live in the community. I've just become so addicted to the area and to the people. I'm just going to sort of bring up, how do I get this thing to go down? Okay, let's go like this so we can see bigger. Can everybody see okay? I can't see you guys now, so if somebody could give me an audio yes.
Yeah, we can see the images.
Okay, cool. All right. So this is when I first started taking photographs in the first year or two. I was getting a bit frustrated because I love the water, but I didn't have a camera that I could take into the water with me. So once, because I love being in the water, and I was sort of always battling, sort of being down there and seeing photos I wanted to take, but not being able to get in the water and take photos. So once I got my, I think, first Olympus TG4, and I was able to get in the water and swim and take photos, that to me was nirvana. I could do all the things I loved at the same time, and started interacting with the characters. This is one of the characters down there, Angela, who's actually a retired art teacher and loves having her photograph taken. So she's a delight, and she's such a character. And so I'm able to get really up close to people, being, I think what Jerry was saying before, the water, how you feel that connection to it. And I think everybody, well, most people feel that connection to water, particularly when they're in it. It's the great equalizer. You never know anybody's background, but, you know, I know often when I get to Bronte Pool and we get in the water, and you'll just turn to strangers next to you and just go, oh my God, this is bliss, this is heaven, all these beautiful adjectives perspectives come out, and we all start talking to each other because we're uninhibited by identities, by socioeconomic status, by age, by gender. It's just such a great unifier. So I was up there this morning again because I'd gone for a swim and taking photos, and I was thinking, this pool is like the pool of life to me, because you get everybody in there of all ages, all backgrounds, and being able to get up close and photograph them in a place where they're probably at their most relaxed in life. I do have to tell you a quick story about this shot here. This guy was up in Bronte one morning, and I took his photo. I said, may I take your photo? And he was really surprised, as often elderly people are. I love taking their photos. And he was very happy for me to take the photo. And he said, oh, are you going to put it on social media? And I said, yeah. And he said, I did have my photo on social media about a year or two ago. A guy took a photo of me. And I said, oh, really? I said, I'm not surprised, you've got such a great face. And he looked a little bit disappointed. And he said, well, the person who put the photo up, and I went to have a look at it, and the title on the photo was Old Man at Beach. And I could see his face was just sort of dropped. And so I thought, I ran home. I was working that day, but I was determined to get the photo up onto Instagram. And then I titled it The Youth of Today, because he's such a youthful, great energy. And then next time I saw him, I showed it, and he laughed. And I said, you have so much youthful vitality. And I think that's the power of an image, and that connection, and how people see both ourselves and people around us. And that's a big thing, I think. In my photography, I'm quite, I suppose, literal like that. I just see so many amazing people around me and at the pool, and you can see in his eyes what an extraordinary personality is. There's a lot of great emigrant ladies who go to Bronte Pool, not to Bondi, not to Tamarama, not to Coogee, because it's got this very old, sort of almost Mediterranean coastal feel. And they get dressed up, and you'll see the lady on the right there. She's got her lipstick on, and in color, they all have beautiful bathing suits. They'll come down different days. They're all chatting to each other as they go. And it's a completely social occasion. 90% of the time, the hair never gets wet. I'm always curious as to why they have the hats on. And of course, I realized one day it's to do with the style. It's not to do with it's not to do with the water at all, which is really charming. I think, I'm skipping along here. Let me just go back here. Oh, gee. This is nighttime. So I'm down at Bronte. Bronte is like my Abiquiu. If any of you are fans of Georgia O'Keeffe, when I went to visit her house in New Mexico, and I remember I looked out at the Abiquiu in the mountain, and she just painted so many variations of it. And I feel Bronte's, I always think of it as my Abiquiu. So this is nighttime, summertime, and this is a whole load of people from the western suburbs had come, and they'd been there all day, which often happens in the summertime, and they'd ordered pizza to be delivered by the pool, and they were taking photos of it, and they were all excited. So 24 hours a day, there's always something going on down there. There's always something to photograph. The elderly community, again, they may not be swimming, they're using the poles to stretch. This is called at a stretch. This is just as you get into the pool. I often sort of position myself there as people turn, and he was, again, elderly, surprised that I wanted to take a photo of him. But I love the Google eyed, I think I call that. It was Google glasses. And this lady actually was in the early morning, and I remember bumping into her. I didn't see her again for another 6 months. And she wasn't aware at the time I took the photo. And I said, oh, I took a photo of you recently. Can I show it to you? And she said, oh, no, I don't want to, I'm so old and this, that, and the other. And I showed her the photo, and she looked and she said, that's not me, that's my daughter. And I said, no, that's you. And it was a really magic moment to be able to show her. She had some tears in her eyes. She couldn't believe. And I said, well, this is what the water brings out in us, So it's, this is one of the first photos I took of my TG4. I think you can see it here behind me as well. The pool boy, and that's Bronte for locals. That's the guy, people on the beach. There's a surfer there, and I'm literally sitting at probably about 30 centimeters from him. I love sneaking up on people. I was like surreptitiously. These are another one of the ladies of Bronte Pool, I call them. I do have a whole series on them. I love the colors. This lady changes her outfit every season. She gets a new hat, new glasses, new bikini. And again, the head never goes under the water. The hat is purely there for show. They're just wonderful. And this is summertime with the girls jumping off the pool, which normally the guys do. So I loved it when I saw the girls jumping and they were holding hands. It just really sort of struck a chord with me. And I waited. I could see they were about to. I just sort of watched them. There's love in the pool. Everything happens in this pool of life. And this intimate moments. People just, the whole world, the curtains just drop. And just seeing people relax. This is a couple who are just standing there together. I think I've seen them a few times since. Again, I'm in the water with my camera there. I'm often in the water taking shots. This is Twin Cheeks. This is actually a position. Anybody goes to Bronte Pool, we all hang off over the side there, especially when there's big surf. But even so, it's just like a hanging point, and we're always, it's very common to the locals. But then we have the old board in the center, and again, people are always up to something on that board. I think this might have been wintertime, just from the tones and the color. All year round, there's something going on. She's so graceful, particularly with the butterflies. I just, it's difficult down there sometimes trying to swim because there's just so much going on. And then the weather, we have the surf. This is when the pool was empty, but there's big surf, and the surf is coming in, and the surf is just pounding over. Obviously, I wasn't in the pool this day. I was further away. And this is another lady who's down there every morning. And again, she's probably in her 80s, even 90s. And she's down there every morning of the year, and she doesn't swim. She just sort of wades around, and then she sits there and looks out to sea. And she's always on her own. And I noticed with her wedding ring there, I often think, is she thinking of her husband? But she always has this sort of faraway look in her eye, which I love, and just a great image. And then equally, we'll have people just sort of laid out in the middle of the day. There's just so much going on there. Then the light changes. Again, this is the side of the pool where we had see people, Twin Cheeks before. That's where you sit up on. There's always people sitting up on there. There's always something going on. Again, that's sort of flipped with the reflections. Again, this is always around this time of the year. We get the beautiful clouds, the beautiful light, and that's the thing about going somewhere the same time. And I'm sure, Jerry, when you were same place to Wollongong, you get to understand the light. You see the different times of year, what's going on. The cloud season is around now. You get those beautiful white clouds, which come out great in black and white. And you get this sort of beautiful blues, which transfer beautifully into black and white as well. This is the net that always comes down in storms, but I liked it. It was like sort of fishnets. It was the name of this because they're stockings. It looked like on the late evening light. These, again, are they're Russian ladies. Two of them are sisters. They are like clockwork. They always arrive at 8:30 every morning, and you can see them walking down, and they're coming from different directions, and they all converge just as they reach the gates of the pool. And again, they change their outfits and their hats and their sunglasses. They all have lipstick on. They all have earrings on. They're just the most wonderful assortment of women. These are reflections on the side of the pool, which come up really well with depending on the time of day and the light. The light is extraordinary down there. This is summer when you get the younger kids coming through. This is called the Bronze Age because it's the height of summer. He's heavily tanned, and I'm normally down there. There's a big waves coming in, and they love hanging off the ropes there. And this is another regular lady. I think she's from Italy, and she has this is showing you what it's like when it's not calm. So I'll just go back there but she has again, they're always, there she is. She's the most beautiful eyes, and she comes down like clockwork, same time, has the beautiful jewelry on. And I think that's a bright peach swimsuit that she's wearing. And then certain times of the day, we get the reflections going on. I mean, for a place that's so small, there's so much happening all the time. And again, this is underwater. And this is the board where the lady was with the butterflies. She was sitting on top of that, and this is underneath it. And I was wondering what that guy was doing. I a lot of times, as you discover when you're clicking in street photography, you're not quite sure what's going to happen. But I remember sort of blurrily seeing him underwater and coming home and going, what was he doing? Again, this is a group of synchronized swimmers who came down to take photos. I'm in the water at the time, and I just see them beautifully, elegantly walking past. Oh, and this is, oh yeah, I'm sort of clicking through quickly here. These are the ladies again. Some of them you saw in the green. These are the two sisters here, and this is their friend. They're all from Russia. They live up on Bondi Road, where all the Russian shops are, and they're just wonderful, wonderful characters. This is the early morning light, which is always stunning as well. I mean, it's like a photographic buffet down there. There's just so much to photograph in, out of the water from different angles. And the light is just so beautiful. Just different. I do like backs for some reason. I sort of follow people around. I like the shape of their back or what they've got on their back, or it's just, I just find it fascinating. Is the big surf, all the young boys. I think this is called the boys line up. Again, this is the light. Again, this is probably around spring and autumn time where we get that beautiful clear light and water around the pool. And this is, again, this is in the evening. I love the colors and the tones and the light. And I'm a big Leica user, and the reason Leica M9 specifically, because they get a really beautiful palette. The sensor they use is a Kodak sensor, and they never used it before or since. But it produces the most beautiful palette, almost painterly. And I'm quite influenced by a lot of the sort of 17th century light and colors and tones. And I like the Leica M9 particularly brings that out for me. And then again, this is early morning. This is the 4:40 at 5:40. There's a group that comes down, and thankfully for COVID, they stopped coming down, but they're all coming back down again now. And they run up and down this big hill, and then they do they cycle as well, and then they all jump in the pool, and they all take all the car parking spots, which really annoys me, and then they leave. But they all jump into the pool for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes later the place is dead again. So this is the 4:40 at 5:40 a.m. in the summer. And this is again the light, which again in the evening, it just changes all the time. I'm just to give you a sort of a Bronte pool, a tour of Bronte pool. Sorry guys, in the sense of a project, it's more of an ongoing thing. I'm not as mature like Ushi and Jerry in the sense of having, well, you guys have been around for longer and you probably have a greater vision in the sense. I'm finding that I'm developing sort of stories that I'm putting together probably more retrospectively rather than intentionally. I know when I go out with my camera, I get drawn towards colors, I get drawn towards light, I get drawn towards people, I get drawn towards faces, I get drawn towards stories, and then I also get drawn towards the ocean. So there's a lot going on. So I'm not sure if, and listening to Ushi and Jerry, that would represent my more maturing more as I go along, that I go out with greater intent rather than with, I come from a very visceral, very reactive. I normally have 3 or 4 cameras in the car. I'll sort of drive around and see what's going on. I don't really have that much intention. And then I'll get out and my eyes will just get focused on one thing and I can't take my eyes off a particular individual or particular color or particular sort of weather condition. And then I'll just become obsessed with that for the next hour. But I'm doing it from a place of responsiveness rather than intent. Yeah. So being the theme of this evening was about projects, I'm probably not the best, but it's something for me to maybe as I evolve to become, because there's still so much for me to learn. In regards to exhibitions with you guys, I don't enter competitions, I don't enter exhibitions. I'm not really, I feel I've got another 5 or 10 years of learning and doing things before I even start doing something like that, because I still feel very much in the apprenticeship stage. There's still so much I've got to learn. I'm getting into film photography. And I suppose one project I have in mind, and I'm sort of the reason I got into photography, because I love history and I love daguerreotypes, but that's where I'd like to get to, where I can do some form of street photography with large format and daguerreotype photography. That's sort of in the back of my mind in 10, 15 years time, which would be interesting. Yeah. So
really
that's me, guys. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my ramblings.
Beautiful images. They all are just beautiful images. And you've probably got a couple of different bodies of work in with all of those ones that you're currently taking.
Yeah, I do. I'll have swimmers, I'll have colours, I'll have clouds, I'll have light, I'll have black and white, I'll have people, I'll have faces.
As you said, retrospectively, you could put together, several bodies of work amongst that.
Yeah. I'm not. I'm very I'm very responsive. I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish maybe I need to do meditation or something.
I'm usually quite the responsive tutor too. So actually working towards this has been like a real challenge for me, but it's been good, because it's kind of forced me out of a comfort zone, if you will, as well.
Yeah, exactly. And
that sometimes is really cool to do as well, just to shoot something completely different where you don't.
Absolutely, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I've traveled all my life, and of course the irony being I only took up the camera when I stopped traveling, and I'm just taking photographs of the same location over and over again. People say, oh, with all those places you've gone, you could have taken photos. But a wise friend said to me once, I think when in the first year when I took up the camera and I said I was off to America and I was going on a road trip, and I said, can't wait to get the photos. And he said, what difference does it make where you are for the photograph that you're taking? And it really stuck with me. It really stuck with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, Rosie, I think, while you said you don't have any necessary projects ongoing, what I look at your work is it's really, you have an incredible body of work, and while there is certainly maybe groups or whatever, I think it's a real testament to photographing what you're really in love with and what you're passionate about, that you've just created this beautiful big project of amazing stuff. I think it's amazing what you do. Yeah. Thank you.
I live in an amazing place. I just go click. It's easy. I don't even have to, I just go like that and go click. There's just so many amazing things around here. So, Yeah,
it looks beautiful. Sure does. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Has anybody got any extra questions that they would like to do? Now's the time to send them through. Lots of credit coming through for the three of you for how beautiful your images are, and for sharing them with us. And there's quite a few messages coming through about that. So just some feedback for the three of you ladies, and thank you so much for sharing with us. I just see if anyone's going to send some questions, but in the meantime, I just would like to do a little quick plug for, we're doing our sister group, Unexposed South Asia. In a few weeks, we're doing a similar thing with 3 photographers from South Asia, 2 Indian women and Bangladeshi woman. And so it should only be 2 or 3 weeks away. We haven't actually set the date, but just keep your eyes open for that. Shweta Agarwal, Lopamudra Talukdar and Tanjila Munia from Bangladesh. So they're beautiful women, beautiful photographers. So just keep your eyes open for that notice, and it will also be fantastic. Be nice to see them supported too. Had lots of people join us tonight. It's wonderful. Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for organising. You guys do such a great job, Linda, Beck, and Julia. Just astonishing. They're so organised. You're always getting everything together. You're always just fantastic. It really is just wonderful. There was nothing around before you guys started doing what you're doing, and in different parts of the country as well. You need to come and organise my life, actually, because you're so good at organising. So thank you guys so much. You do a great job.
Yeah,
really.
You give us so much of your time, and just some of the projects that the girls put together, as a means for us to share our work is just phenomenal. So kudos to you girls, and thank you very much for all you do for us women photographers.
Yeah.
It's our pleasure.
Mm.
And we love doing it, Ushi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please be back from dinner, Julia.
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, well, I think that's it. And yeah, thank you all for talking, the three of you for talking, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's been fantastic, and watch this space. We'll be doing some more.